Shadowcrest Commander Zelios of Clan Starstrike. Even though I had implants to help calm my nerves, I was overloading them. My mind was constantly running, creating scenarios of the conversations I would have with these two titanic forces of the Terran Federation. As we got closer to the massive War Master, I simply marveled at it. Unlike the Umbra ships that were all sleek in design, like a feline predator or bird of prey, this behemoth was closer to a Terran bear in likeness. It was symmetrical in shape but bulky, with jagged edges that made it look like an elongated Terran hedgehog with massive thrusters on one end. An uncountable number of hangars and turrets dotted its surface in symmetrical lines and crosses, creating a striking pattern across it. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. We docked in a hangar on the front port side of the ship, and its interior was just as impressive. Everything was clean and efficient as I would expect from the Terrans, but I wouldn't doubt that whoever designed their ships had a good dose of OCD. Landing went smoothly and we exited our craft. The air was filled with the smells of metal, the bustling sounds of workers checking crafts, looking over data, and overall preparing for war. It was a somber feeling witnessing it. Some of these people would probably not get to go home, dying in a war light years away from their family and loved ones. It made my resolve even fiercer to finish what these bastards of the Ziran Empire started. We were greeted by a commanding staff of the War Master and promptly brought onto a floating train, way larger than the one in the Sentinel. This is where I also got a good look at the elite troops besides the Umbra soldiers, the Star Marines. These soldiers were every bit as fit and muscular in appearance as Gray, but wore dark blue combat gear from head to toe that I heard could change color depending on the environment. They were also enhanced, but to a much lesser degree than the typical Umbra soldier. These soldiers were the shock troopers of the Terran Navy, hitting hard to break any fortified line of enemy defense. But if I didn't know better, I could swear I felt some scorn from them being directed at Gray, who stood next to me. "Don't worry, this is normal," came a whisper from Gray, as if he knew what I was thinking. "Us Terrans have always been competitive, and branches of our military have had a somewhat healthy rivalry for centuries. It makes us want to achieve greater results," he continued explaining. "Is it? I feel like their ire is more directed at your uniform rather than you," I whispered back. "That is also quite a reasonable ire. Getting into the Umbra is a dream for many soldiers within every branch of the Terran military. It proves you have what it takes to be the elite of the elite. Feeling hurt or anger for not getting picked is a very understandable emotion when you are a person who is full of drive," he finished explaining as our train stopped at our destination. From there, we entered a sizable hovercraft that took us onto a literal 8-lane highway. This ship was just too big. We glided along the lane and went over a large hangar that was creating ships. Ships large enough to be classed as destroyers in our fleet by the number of weapons that dotted over them. So now this was not only a capital ship but a shipyard as well. I was lost for words. Terrans are now undisputed masters of warfare in my mind. We drove for about 15 minutes until we took a lane that went up to the right, into what seemed like a commanding center judging by the people walking around wearing rather decorated military outfits. We exited the vehicle and walked towards a lift that took us to a clean but ornate hallway that led to a closed steel door. There were hologram images of military personnel from different branches behind every column that we passed, and each was described as a war hero behind their name. We walked to the end of the hallway until the personnel guiding us halted. "Only Commander Zelios is allowed past this door to meet with General Draven and Operator Tyr. Lieutenant Major Gray, you must stay here until the meeting is over," the staff member said stiffly. I shifted my eyes towards Gray and saw that for a brief moment his eyes went wide with shock. I knew it. He didn't know that I was about to meet the head of the military itself. He quickly regained his composure and nodded. "I'll wait here for you to finish. Good luck," he said, and I swear I could feel every ounce of sincerity in his voice as he said those words. I steeled myself as the doors opened. I entered a large, dimly lit room, which had a silhouette of a person standing by a hologram table that showed what appeared to be a star map. I walked over towards him but stood stuck in place when my eyes got better adjusted to the dim light. In front of me stood a metallic humanoid. Its features looked like a lean Terran male, but every part of it glistened in a metallic hue. "Greetings, Commander Zelio Starstrike. I am Tyr, the head operator of the Terran military," it said in a deep voice that sounded unnaturally organic as it looked up and turned towards me. Its lips synced perfectly to what it was saying. "Greetings, Operator Tyr. It's an honor to meet you," I tried to say in as calm a voice as I could, but to no avail. "You scared the poor lad half to death there, Tyr. Be a bit more considerate towards him," came a growly voice from right beside me that made me almost molt on the spot. I looked to my right and saw a large man in black combat gear, not unlike what the Umbra soldiers wear. His wrinkled, ashen skin shone faintly in the dim light, and he stared intensely at me with only one deep black eye. The other was closed, with a deep scar running over it that went from the side of his nose up to his short-cut blackish-gray hair. "I think you terrified him more than me, Draven," Tyr said as he walked towards me and stood now only a meter in front of me. His eyes glowed in a faint green color. "It was just a bit of fun. I don't get a lot of chances to scare new recruits," Draven said with an evil grin, which made the walking machine in front of me sigh as it placed its hands on its hips. "I do not wish to cause you distress, Commander, but I wanted to meet you face to face. Although this is just a puppet, it makes people more at ease to talk to something physical rather than a speaker on the wall," Tyr said with a smile as he raised his metallic arm for a handshake. "I can get behind that notion, but knowing that you are a super advanced AI is quite an experience," I answered in return as I shook his hand. He smirked, which felt forced, like it was calculated and not genuine. "Come, I have some things to discuss with you," Tyr said as he turned and walked back to the hologram table, walking gracefully with his back straight and hands behind his back. Meanwhile, General Draven felt different as I got a better look at him. He was slim, but I could see well-toned muscles under that armor. He walked with a slight hunch as if prepared to spring into action. Suddenly he grabbed me by the shoulder. "Well then, Commander Zelios, tell me, what do you think about my Umbra Vanguard?" he said with a most vile grin, as if hazing a new prospect. They are. Your soldiers are simply incredible. Amazing discipline, tactical-minded, and the most complimentary quality in my opinion is their compassion to help others in need and stand in the face of tyranny," I said quickly, but with passion as I was reminded of when my hometown was saved by Grey. He stared at me for a short while with a blank face. "A good answer," he said with a slight smile. "Don't bully him, Draven. He needs to be fully intact both physically and mentally for the foreseeable future," came a sharp remark from Tyr, who looked at us with an irritated expression that seemed genuine. How in the world did they make that suit for it? Tyr's puppet looked and felt just way too real. Fine, don't get your wires jumbled. I was just having a bit of fun," Draven exclaimed. We walked next to the table, and Tyr seemed to work the table with his mind as a new star map appeared and zoomed in on what appeared to be our location at first glance. "As you probably know by now, all but 2 planets that were attacked by the Zirans have been liberated. We are now going to be moving into Ziran-held territories. Unfortunately, some slave ships have managed to transport Illyrian citizens back to Ziran space. The first task that I will be giving your army and Lieutenant Major Grey is to attack a merchant hub that operates close to the border. It is run by House Nekroth, a noble house that specializes in trading slaves. It is a giant moving platform with minimal defenses. Your forces should make light work of it, but just in case, I will deploy some Navy vessels and Marines to assist you," Tyr said as the hologram showed an image of the platform. It was as pompous in appearance as the nobles of the Ziran Empire. It was simply a giant platform with towering structures jutting from it in a huge blob with another layer stacked on top of it. It shone in bright colors as if to advertise itself, and Tyr was right. The defenses were abysmal to say the least. A few turrets warded off asteroids or other debris. There were some fighter planes darting around it, but most ships that were located there were definitely noble commercial ships or pleasure cruisers in nature, the same striking colorations of red, purple, and yellow. "Should we expect an SOS signal from them once we attack?" I asked as I studied the image, contemplating how to infiltrate this bloated thing. "Once you get into range of the station, our ships can block all communications. It won't be a problem, but in all likelihood there will be enemy captains that will want to look at the new merchandise. so I expect there to be at least 1 or 2 military vessels docked at that station when you attack, Tyr said, which gave me a sense of relief that we got an escort. There will be a significant number of civilians on board, both Xiran and slaves. Among those is another sentient species that is being traded off besides the Illyrians. They are known as Borelli, Tyr explained as a picture of the being was shown on the hologram. It was a stout, furry being about 1.5 meters tall. It had 3 red eyes and a circular mouth, 2 small rounded ears, 2 legs with 3 toes each, and 2 arms with 3 thick fingers on each hand. The head only rose a tiny bit from the torso, and the arms were less furry, so it looked like a walking furball with a head and arms. They are used as laborers in environments that have low temperatures, excavating minerals and terraforming icy planets. It is essential that you rescue them as well as the Illyrian captives. You should keep Xiran's civilian casualties to a minimum as well. But that is not a priority. Tyr continued to explain, but those last words were spoken with such indifference that it made me shudder. Should we not consider taking captives? There might be some nobles who could be of use, I said as I looked at Tyr. He stared back at me with those cold green eyes. Not needed. If there are any who resist, you are permitted to use deadly force, it said in a nonchalant way. I had almost forgotten this is not a person. Tyr is a machine created for war. It probably has more than enough data on our enemies that any hostages are nothing more than dead weight to it. There should be some use for them, right? I semi-pleaded. You will have to be the judge of that, lad. This will be your fight. You will be the highest commanding officer on this mission, and will have to make the judgment when you get there. Tyr gave you a mission, but this is also a test. A test to see how well you operate with us. This will not be like Tyri. You must make the hard decisions. This is war, and you must make decisions on the fly as well as planning beforehand, Draven said sternly as he glanced at me with his one eye. I will not fail this mission. Even though they are Xiran, they are still sentient and will be frightened. I will make sure this will end with next to no civilian casualties, I said, raising my head and puffing out my chest to show my seriousness. Very well, good luck on your first mission, Commander Zelios. I expect good results from you, said Tyr, but with a smile that seemed quite genuine, as if he wanted this response from me. Go now, Commander. You will get updated information on your Katad. The entire fleet will begin its assault in 68 Terran hours. Go prepare and have a good hunt, General Draven said whilst giving me a pat on the back. I saluted in Terran fashion and started to head out. Gray was waiting for me just outside the door. He was chatting with the Marines. Seems like he's a natural conversationalist. So how was it, meeting the two of them? Gray asked with a coy smile. Nerve-wracking. I've never been so nervous in my entire life, even with the implants, I replied as I felt relieved to be out of that room. Well, did we get a mission from Operator Tyr? Asked Gray with a hint of excitement. Indeed. I will tell you about it on the way back, I answered as we started to head back to Tyrus Wharf. Operator Tyr. Tell me, Draven, what do you think about our new ally and comrade? I asked whilst going over the maps I got from Hugin. Thousands of scenarios went through my mind every second whilst I waited for an answer. He is a bright commander. After getting his implants, he showed a very tactical mind whilst commanding his troops and cooperating with ours. I believe he is a good asset to have, but he is still a bit soft. Why do you ask? He answered back in his gruff voice that I knew so well. He is the only Terran I call a friend, and he has been my friend for a long time. I believe he is a bit soft as well, but he has a warrior's spirit and a kind heart. That is a virtue that I respect, I answered back as I mulled over Zelios's background whilst running more scenarios. Whilst going over his medical records when he got implanted, I noticed that Munin did some tests on his DNA. Interesting, I mused to myself as I quickly contacted Munin through our link to get access to the data. Greetings, Tyr. How can I be of assistance? Came a chime from Munin. I always liked talking to him, mainly because of our differences in how we operate and our interests. Greetings, Munin. I have a favor to ask. Could you give me the data on Commander Zelios's DNA results? Did you find anything interesting in your testing? I asked to bait him out a bit, since he loved to speak about new findings. Oh yes, here they are. They are quite interesting. The Illyrian species has a very interesting structure, and I did some tests to see if they are compatible to be given more implants. They should theoretically be able to have a 98% survival rate from phase 1 of initiation, but the effects should only be about 40% of the Terran initiate's potential, Munin answered enthusiastically. That is very interesting. Thank you, Munin. I wish I had more time to talk, but I must prepare for the assault. I will talk to you at a later date, I said as I bid him farewell. I looked over the data and started to create new scenarios that went well into the future, well after we have brought down the Xeran Empire. I will make Zelios a war hero of the Illyrian species and a steadfast ally of the Terran Federation. If he liberates the captured Illyrians and other sentient species and establishes himself as a hero of the people with the help of Terran tech, it will make Terrans look much more favorable in their eyes as well as those of the other sentient species that border the Illyrians. But I must have him go through the Phase 1 initiation process. Draven, tell me what you think of this. I got some new knowledge about our Illyrian allies, I said as I sent him the data to his Kotad. His one eye lit up as he processed the information. I could tell that he was thinking hard about the ideas I sent. I don't think he will accept any more implants. It is almost a taboo to get augmentations in Illyrian society, he answered back as he looked at me with a hint of concern. What are you planning to do about that? He asked as he looked at me. If he gets injured enough that the only way to save him is to make him go through Phase 1, I believe we can be successful in this plan, I answered as I went through the scenarios again. Now his eyebrows furrowed into anger. Are you saying that we should intentionally harm our ally? Tier, this is going too far. He is a part of Umbra now. I'm not willing to harm my own, he said in a growl. Draven, I said as I walked up to him. You have known me for a long time. Have my plans ever failed? I asked whilst looking at his facial expressions. He grumbled for a few seconds. His veins bulged as if he wanted to curse me out. He sighed. Fine, you owe me a lot for asking me to do this. For the record, this is the most vile plan you have come up with to date. Don't turn into a schemer like Hugin. It is already enough to have one of him, Draven said as he looked at me, anger still lingering on his face. And how do you think we should wound him, huh? Draven asked as he crossed his arms. Have a member of the Eclipse Cell use a Xeran sniper rifle. When Zelios and his men assault the platform, have him take up a position for a clean shot. A shot to the upper abdomen should suffice. The nano-drones will keep him alive. Then he shall be transported to the Obsidian Sentinel to go through Phase 1. I answered confidently. Nah. He looked at me for a few seconds before he turned and walked away to the exit. He stopped and turned halfway to look at me. I will do this, but if this plan of yours in some way fails, you and I will never speak again, he said as he turned back and walked out the door. This is for the future of humanity, Draven. I will do whatever is within my power to ensure humanity comes out on top, even if it sours our friendship.